Would you continue your applause as Heath brings us to the Lord today? Come on, Heath.
So how's everyone doing? You still awake? You good? I know a lot of you are checking out right now and looking at your phones to, bored and all that good stuff, but if I can just keep you for just a couple more minutes, for just a few more minutes, just kind of lock in here. Hopefully I will say something worth remembering. If not, this is the last session, so you can't find me anyway. So you can't blame me. We're good. So what I want us to look at is this. What this week has shown us is that there are crazy moments that come up in life. There are a lot of crazy moments that come up in life. And how we react to those moments determines so much about how receptive we are to what God wants to do in our lives. Now, I would like to say that all the moments that I've faced, I have faced them well, that I have faced them with confidence and boldness, that I have taken the right steps when crazy things that have threatened to catch me off guard have come my way. But I haven't. I remember years ago, I owned this little Honda CRX. Does anybody know what those are? They look like a door wedge, basically, just chopped off on the back. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and somehow, I don't know how I survived, but for the first 3 years of driving, I had no air conditioning. Now, if you haven't lived in Phoenix, you don't understand the immense pain of reaching out and grabbing the steering wheel when it's 120 degrees outside and your car has been parked in the parking lot for the last 8 hours. It's excruciating. We actually do wear oven mitts when we get in the car. It is that bad. And all of this stuff about it's a dry heat, so is an oven, people. You know that blast when you open it up and you breathe in, you're like, oh my goodness. That is every day during summer for us. It is awful. So one of these days I am driving and that steering wheel has been excruciatingly hot. And I'm driving and just kind of like you're just holding that steering wheel with a couple fingers, okay? And I'm driving to work and I'm about to make a right turn into the parking lot. Now, my pet peeve, when people are making right turns, how many of you have been behind someone who feels the need to come to a complete stop when they're turning right? I am not one of those people, praise Jesus. Unfortunately for me, on this day, I wish I had. Because I had been driving for a few years at this point, and there's a lot of things that driver's ed prepares you for. But as I was turning right into the parking lot, I grabbed the steering wheel with my hand, cranked the wheel, and as I did so, the steering wheel kept going, falling into the passenger seat and onto the floor. Now, I've taken the driver's test, people. I've read the manual. Nothing prepared me for that moment. And in that split second, everything ran through my brain as I am looking at the steering wheel now on the floor of the passenger seat, and my car is still going as I've slowly started turning into this, and of course, I am not at a complete stop. I would like to tell you that at that moment, I handled everything with confidence, that I was grounded in that moment, that everything suddenly was laser focused and that MacGyver gene kicked in and I knew exactly what to do. Unfortunately, my response was a little bit more like this. I reached out with my hands and started grasping at the little metal pins and trying to crank this into the parking lot. What felt like 4 hours of navigation was actually just a few seconds. Now, honestly, what I should have done was gone, hey, I should probably hit the brakes. Maybe come to a stop and figure out the rest of it so that I don't kill myself. But in that moment, when things happen, we make some crazy decisions. When crazy things come our way, when the world comes unhinged, we get this tunnel vision, and suddenly we don't see the big picture anymore. We start looking at the emergency that's right in front of us, the thing that's happening right there, and suddenly everything else goes black, and we are just focused in on the problem. And we stop seeing the big picture. As Scott said earlier in the week, we forget the plot. You know, and that one was one that I narrowly survived. I lived to tell the tale. But things got a little bit more serious, and things for you and I get a little bit more serious. For those of you who have families, suddenly the weight of that and these moments come up, and there's so much more gravity to them. So here's a picture of my family. Those are my 3 boys. That's my wife Jill. Now Braden is the firstborn. He is that type A. He is that, everything's got a place, all that good stuff. He's his own worst, critic in his mind. Carter, our middle child, is basically the middle child. I mean, he doesn't have to be the best. He just has to be better than you, okay? And then Rylan is a little psychotic. We're just trying to keep him alive right now, okay? But he will make up rules on the fly so that he can win. So they're playing football in the backyard, and all I hear is this: "That touchdown doesn't count. I tagged you with my lightsaber." Now, I'm a musician. I get it. There's a lot about sports I don't know. But I don't think those are in the rules. But they are in the rules if it means that Rylan wins. But what happens with all of these personalities, you suddenly, as a dad, I start feeling the weight of taking care of them, what it means for them to become the people that God intended them to be. You start valuing every second that you have with them. You understand that there's so much more happening that is beyond you. And I remember about 2 years ago in January, I had the opportunity to be invited to be a part of the staff team at Experience. And one of the first things that I got to be a part of was that Al decided to bring us all out to New Mexico. And at New Mexico, I thought we were going to do this time of intense planning, and we got there and he said, "Guys, we're going skiing." Like, I've never skied in my life. I'm from Phoenix. And so over the course of the next couple days, I injured my body in more ways than I can imagine. I swear to you, there was one point where I am on skis and I'm going this fast. And I cannot stop. Julie Elias, who's our sponsor director, she is standing there and she's going, "Stop, stop, stop." And there's this huge light fixture that's just coming up right in front of me, and I can't stop. And I put everything up against it and bracing, and I hit this thing going 1 fraction of a mile per hour. Bam! That's how skilled I am. But after this crazy week of all of this stuff and all the bruising and everything, during the course of this, I got news that a friend of mine who was about my age, had 2 kids of his own. His kids and his wife had gone to the park. And while they were there, he laid down and had a massive brain hemorrhage. And then hearing that his kids came back, and they're the ones who found him. And this starts rattling around in my head because I start going, what if that had been my kids? What if that had been me? What do I do with that? Are my kids ready to face this life without me? And as I'm getting on the plane, or attempting to get on the plane to head home, my flight gets delayed. I haven't eaten now for about 24 hours, and I'm running from gate to gate because they keep shifting this stuff. And before you know it, I've gone most of the day without actually even drinking water or eating or anything like that. I'm all dinged up from my ski trip and everything. And I fly back, and my wife picks me up. And my wife is a nurse. There are aspects of her job that make me cringe. I cannot deal with my own blood, let alone anyone else's. When the kids get cut, I go, honey, right over here, quick. And she starts going into detail about the condition of the body when the kids found him. And all of this stuff starts racing back, and I'm going, I'm having a hard time keeping clarity and focus here. And then suddenly I get really warm and I feel my heart racing. And as she's describing all this stuff, suddenly I feel the corners of my vision start turning black. And I'm getting this crazy tunnel vision, and I'm like, hey, Jill, you might want to pull. And that's the last thing I said. And my wife said that I just slumped over with my eyes open in the passenger seat. When I came to, we were in the parking lot, and she was slapping me, and my wife... My wife's got a swing on her, I'll tell you that right now. And I'm hearing sirens in the background. And she's going, Heath, wake up, wake up, wake up. Come on, wake up. And I remember the ride in the ambulance. And I remember, because I'm an idiot, I'm joking the whole time with the guys who were driving me. And I remember getting there and just going, what is happening? What is going on? Is this really how this is all going to go down? Is this it? Am I getting out of here? Am I going to make it through this? Last night I'm telling this story to a friend of mine, and she's like, did you? Unfortunately, no. It was a beautiful service, though. Sorry, Allie. And I remember going, how is this possible that this is what's going to happen? Because doctor came in and said, we got to see if this is a heart thing. We're not sure what's going on. We got to run you through all these tests and everything. And I'm sitting there, and my wife is pacing back and forth, and she's on the phone with the church to let them know what's happened, because I had just recently become one of the lead pastors at our church, which is crazy, because if you knew me, you'd go, really? And letting them know, he's laughing a little too much at that. And she's pacing back there, and the guy, one of the doctors, comes forward, and he's like, I'm going to go ahead and get you wheeled back to start these tests. And so the aide comes up to get me, and he introduces himself, and I start smiling. And then I start laughing. And then I'm like, I'm sorry. Let me just tell my wife something really quick. So my wife's on the phone just a few paces away, and I'm like, honey, yeah, they're going to take me now. But if I'm not here when you get back, just know I've gone to be with Jesus. And at that point, the aide said, actually, it's Jesus. And my wife threatened to kill me at that point. But I'm like, isn't that just like God in the moment of all of this seriousness, where all I'm thinking about is that moment? He sends an aide to me who introduces himself and says, hi, I'm Jesus. I will be taking care of you for the rest of your time here. Jesus has come for me. And just put everything else in perspective. Because a lot of times when we're looking at those moments, we get so into the problem that we forget that God is writing a story that is so much bigger. And you and I, we work at churches, and we are hit every week with the urgency of the immediate. We are hit with problems all the time, and if we're not careful, we can lose the plot. We can forget that God is telling an epic story that transcends anything, any situation that we are facing in that moment. It's bigger than what's right in front of us. If you have a Bible, if you could turn to Numbers 20, we're going to start in verse 2. There's going to be the scriptures back here on the screen as well. But I want us to take a look at just that kind of moment. A moment that's easy to get lost in, and you can get wrapped up in that moment and forget the rest of the story. Now what we have is we have Moses, who is leading the people of Israel. And they've been in the desert, and I'll tell you what, Israel is just a cranky mess. Every time something goes bad, they are complaining about it. Sound familiar? Anytime things go good, someone's like, well, yeah, but it could have been better. That's a lot of our weekend services right there, people. And here is an instance where Israel is complaining again. And it kicks off, we'll pick it up in verse 2. It says, now there was no water for the people, and they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. The people complained to Moses, saying, if only we had died when our brothers died before the Lord. Why have you brought the Lord's people into this desert for us and our animals to die here? Why have you made us come up from Egypt to bring us into this bad place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there's no water to drink. Then Moses and Aaron went from the people to the door of the meeting tent and bowed to the ground. They saw the shining greatness of the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, take the special stick. I love that translation, the special stick. You and your brother Aaron gather the people together. Speak to the rock in front of them, and it will give its water. So you'll bring water out of the rock for them. Let the people and their animals drink. So Moses took the special stick from the Lord, just as he had told him. Moses and Aaron gathered the people in front of the rock, and he said to them, listen now, you people who go against the Lord. Man, this is where you and I would love to go off sometimes. Should we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moses lifted up his hand and hit the rock twice with his stick, and more than enough water came out. The people and their animals drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you have not believed me and honored me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, you will not bring these people into the land I have given them. What? What? Because I didn't decide to talk to an inanimate object, because I didn't want to look stupid talking to a rock. Hey, rock, can you give us some water? Because I didn't do that? You're punishing me? I don't get to go into the promised land because of that? This is a guy that was given the law. This is a guy who led all of Israel out of captivity. This is a guy who had given up everything to do what God had asked him to do. And he doesn't talk to a rock. He gets frustrated in one moment, and God says, sorry, you can't go. And instead, Moses climbs up onto a hill and gets to see the promised land. He gets to see it. And he asked God a little bit earlier, please, if there's a way, can I please, just let me set foot in there. And instead, Moses dies. And we look at that, and I'll tell you what, that's not fair to me. That's not fair. How many of us have given our heart and soul into something only to have the situation or whatever happens rip it all away, and you're going, God, come on. We're leading up into this week. And I'll tell you what, in my personal life and things that are happening even at my church, I needed this win this week, and we were going into this week with our highest registration year ever. I'm like, yes, I need this. And then Dorian, I'm like, come on, God, that's not fair. I haven't done anything wrong. Why is this happening on top of the other stuff that's happening? Why are you taking this away from me? Because there's something more to the story. And in that moment, we can get so much tunnel vision that we forget that God is writing a bigger story. There's a bigger story going on. And we can look at this story in Numbers and we can go, God, that just doesn't seem fair. But guess what? That's not our decision or call to make. And what's great, though, is that because it's in Scripture, we have an opportunity of taking a step back outside of space and time and seeing the overarching story. Because the overarching story is amazing. Because if you turn to Matthew 17, fast forward hundreds and hundreds of years. Now Jesus is walking around in the promised land with his disciples. The very promised land that Israel had so long waited for. Jesus is walking around in the promised land. And in verse 1 it says this, after 6 days Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them. Who appeared? Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Now, it doesn't describe the expression on Moses' face. But when I read that, I can picture Moses fully engaged with Jesus, but kind of going, this ain't bad. This is pretty nice. This is the land that I thought had been taken away from me. That I never thought I would actually be standing in. And I can't tell you how many times I read this passage and missed that point. See, instead of standing with a nation of cranky people, he's standing in the promised land. The man who was given the law, standing with the one who fulfills the law. There's a bigger story going on, guys. And I'll tell you what, I know, I just know the stories that are represented in this room. Some of the stories in this room, you're with me, you're walking through it right now. You think your story's taken a bad turn. You got in a story that's not fair. You didn't do anything to deserve it. You think maybe a dream's been taken away from you. Maybe you're at a crossroads and you're trying to figure out, where do I go from here? And what I hope you have gotten from this week, and I hope that you're getting right now, is that you may think that your dream is over. You may think that things have taken a turn and there's no way to get back what has been lost. You may think that it is over. You may think that your dream has died back there on that hill, but I'm telling you today that you're wrong. Because there's a bigger story going on. We often forget that the water that we so desperately need only comes with a storm. And we get wrapped up in being thirsty. We get wrapped up in the need. We get wrapped up in that moment. And then the storm hits and we're like, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? We forget the plot. And then the rain comes. It may not make sense right now, guys. What you're going through may not make sense. But I'm telling you, keep going. Keep going. If anything that this week has taught me, it's this: keep going. Because the story you thought you were writing is nowhere near as amazing as the story that God is writing with your life, in your ministry, in your hearts. What God is doing in each and every one of you is so much bigger than anything that you could have put together on your own. Keep going. Because the one who fulfills the law has a plan to stand with you and make sure that dream that he has for you has not died. As as you leave this place, be reminded of that. Own it, keep it, take it, put it in your heart, and know this, that the story he has for you is not finished, and it is good. Keep going. You got to keep going. You keep going. God, I pray for each and every person who's here. I pray that as they leave this place, as they go back to what could be feeling like a grind or maybe a situation that has come up that they don't know how to deal with, God, I pray that you would remind them that they need to keep going. God, remind them that the story that you have is good, that you are good, that your plans and purposes are good. But even though the storm is scary, it's in their lives because they so desperately need the rain. You're at work, God. And I wish I could say that we actually know how that story turns out, but I'll tell you what, we trust you with it. We trust you with it. Thank you for what you've done this week. Thank you for what you're about to do. And thank you for the end of the story that we don't even know yet. Because we believe that you're faithful. And we believe that you're going to do something great in this world and for your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen.